Hello, good morning guys, F here. Just wanted to put forward some thoughts about storytelling and storytelling in general. Just so you guys, when you see my posts around the forum, you understand my perspective of where I'm coming from and sort of, the way I'm thinking about things. So let me start off by saying that I find it interesting that in sort of tribal days or quote unquote olden time days where cavemen were sort of walking around, stuff like that. Say a tribe was having a particular argument, they would have a shaman or some sort of sort of tribal leader there, or a dedicated seneschal, I think that's the terminology, who would sit down and actually tell the tribe or group of people a particular story. Now the story would relate to the problem or the difficulties which was actually occurring during the tribe during that time. So every once in a while the story would be told, and if the situation was slightly different, the storyteller or the tribal leader or whoever was putting forth this story would tweak this person's personality a little bit, would alter the symbology of the main things which happened throughout the story, this, that and the other, until the story actually made sense to resolve the problem. Now of course on a conscious level, the people's conscious minds would be thinking, okay, this is what's happening on the story, on the surface level, but underneath what was happening was that people's unconscious minds were always drawing symbologies, analogies, linking things together, saying, okay, I'm that character, that person's that character, okay, this is the tribal's or the problem the group is having at this point in time, I understand that, click. And the changes would be made in people's minds without their conscious awareness. So the question I ask you now is, what the hell am I talking about? Well, what the hell I'm talking about is, I really believe that sort of storytelling is one of the most sort of important things there are in existence. I mean, it's lasted for God knows how long, right? And no matter how long it's lasted for, it's always done the same things. It's always entertained, it's always captured people's imaginations, it's always led people's emotions, it made us identify with characters, and it made us enjoy the various stories that we've heard. So what I'm proposing is that if you have a enjoyable piece of fandom that you are experiencing, that means that you've probably got a good story on your hands. So don't get me wrong, just straight off the bat here, I'm not saying that every single piece of fandom out there has to have some deep underlying meaning. It can't be just pure fun. If it's not sort of teaching people how to behave in a particular way or has some underlying message to help people resolve their problems, that it's crap. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that chances are, if you have a really good piece of fandom on your hands, it's going to have at least some of this sort of storytelling sort of perspective or elements within it. And the way I think about it personally is, story, characters, and emotions. If you've got all three of these all sustain and support each other, you're probably going to have a good piece of fandom on your hands. And this is what I think is really interesting, that all these sort of high-level executives or distribution companies, I don't know, I'm not really concerned of how the world works, to be honest. They are going after it for the cash. I mean, it's always about the cash. But the funny thing is that if they actually took a risk and wrote proper stories, took the time to sort of emotionally flesh out their characters, actually put forward a really good storyline that people can identify with, people would identify with it so much that they would end up making more money than what they are currently making from it now. Everyone wins, right? The character I used to dress up with when I was younger was Batman. So my mother bought me a little sort of Batman sort of costume. Had a little sort of plastic, Batman, visor or whatever, and I would go around and pretend to be Batman with my cape. So you can say on a very literal level that I identified with Batman as a kid. So naturally, there's a connection between me and Batman there, at least. And that's another thing. There's always two types of sort of like emotional connections. There's a connection that when you're sort of watching a story, you're thinking, yep, I understand what that person's going through. I can identify with that person. That is me. And those are the times that when you're in the cinema or watching something or reading something, like time goes by so quickly. And that is because you're not here in this reality anymore. You're actually living through that character. So your brain is like highly tuned in on thinking, okay, if I was in that situation, because I'm already emotionally in the same space, I'm really interested to see what would happen because I really want to resolve this issue, or I'm curious enough to the point where I'm going to forget about myself and immerse myself in that character so much that not only am I like that character, but I am that character. So therefore, you're not even in this reality anymore. You're sort of in the story. That's why the best movies, the best pieces of fandom out there, you will come out of there thinking like that no time has passed because you were so immersed in that experience. There's another indirect sort of way, which is if you don't identify with the character directly, you either know someone who is like one of the characters in the movie, or even though you don't do any of those two I just mentioned, you sort of still understand where the person is coming from, and you sort of take on the role of what they are feeling. Let's take the Batman example, since the Dark Knight is coming out next month. It's hard to identify with Batman a little bit. Why? Because who is this analytical detective sort of. But then again, I'm speaking for myself. Maybe whoever's watching this video, maybe your parents got killed or something like that, or you want to see justice done. Now, if you have those sort of emotional sort of investments in the situation, boom, when you see Batman, I would have to suggest it would be hard pressed for you not to be connected with this character. So when you're watching the movie, boom, you're going to be so much more connected to that character. And your emotions will be led throughout this sort of emotional sort of battlefield to either a resolution, or of course, it could be like something negative, and it'll be like a cautionary tale. Like if you do drugs this much, you will sort of this is the path that will actually happen, or if you become an alcoholic, this is the sort of life that would actually happen. So either way, you're going to sort of learn about the situation. And I think that's where sort of like storytelling is sort of really comes into its own. It's a way to sort of like give our unconscious minds a preview of like this is sort of like what will happen if you do certain things, or this is sort of like how you can resolve these particular issues. And that's why I really want to say that like fandom, sure, it's fun, it's entertaining, but I really think that fandom at its best has importance beyond purely superficial entertainment. I really think that some of the best stories I've read, some of the best games I've played, some of the best movies I've seen like had a underlying message that I could relate to, that I knew someone like in the story that I could identify with, and the story went a particular direction where I could really connect to and identify that with. And I really think that of course not all the time, but if you're enjoying a piece of fandom, think to yourself, like what parts of this character can I identify with? What emotions are engaged? What elements of the story sort of mirror in my own life? I really think that the things that we can relate to the most are the things that we enjoy the most, and the more we share these things with other people, the more we can help each other to change everything for the better. So I think that like on an emotional level, like if you're sort of like having an angry reaction, or you're enthralled, or you're sort of sad, if you watch a movie or read something and you start crying, you better believe that you have an emotional connection to that character. Why? Well, say like a homeless person just crashed through that door just there and just died at my feet. Am I going to sort of run to him and sort of say, oh, are you okay, blah, blah? Of course not. I don't care. I'm going to call the ambulance, but I'm not going to sort of like step down and be like, oh, are you okay, how are you feeling, blah, blah, blah. Because there's no emotional connection there. But if you start like having like wet eyes when you're watching a movie, either you relate to that character, someone else that has gone through what that character has gone through, or you are taking on the role of feeling what that character is feeling, and you're being temporarily identified with that character to the point where when something happens to it, it's like the brain's like, oh, that's me. Yep, I would have exactly the same emotional response. I understand exactly how that would lead to crying. Damn, I'm going to cry now. Boom, and it just happens, yeah? So I think that automatically, if you're having an emotional reaction, you've got an incredible piece of fandom on your hands. Of course, what's an emotional reaction without characters that support it, and of course the story actually going in interesting directions, which is why I've got the logo over there of my Triforce, like story, characters, and emotions. You got all three of them, you've got a good piece of fandom up your sleeve. So what else can I say? I can say that there's an episode of sort of Quantum Leap, which I've reviewed in the past. I think of another video somewhere on YouTube here. Basically, the character of Sam Beckett leaps into a TV show host, not a host, really a character, and the character's name is Future Boy, and he's dressed up in looks like silver foil to me, and as a result, he's got this audience of children. He travels to the future, and into space and all this sort of stuff. Now, there's a question time where one of the kids sort of asks the character of Sam Beckett, which is he's leapt into Future Boy. He goes something like, Future Boy, my dog just died, so my dog just sort of passed away. Can you tell me what's happened to my dog? Is my dog in a safe place? Is my is my dog going to be okay? Just tell me, where is my dog? And right then and there, the child's mind is so wide open, and Sam Beckett can throw anything he wants there, knowing that this child has a connection with Future Boy, and he knows that anything that is going to be said is going to go straight in this child's mind and change his perspective for the better, and give him some hope and give him some closure on this issue. And I really think that's why I sort of identify with that sort of story, in that Sam wanting to sort of use the story of him as Future Boy within Quantum Leap as a sort of facilitator for giving this child this particular perspective. And I think that's where sort of fandom really has to go into if it really has to produce some sort of quality things. So once again, I'm not saying everything has to sort of be a very sort of explicit, oh, okay, I understand what that character is going through. Oh, okay, this has to have some sort of finite problem or something to resolve, stuff like that. I mean, take the example of the Matrix. But even then with the Matrix, what guy on some level does not identify with Neo at least a little bit? That's what made it so great. Think about all the characters in the Matrix, and Morpheus and Trinity. Think about the story, just how crazy that whole movie was. I mean, just as crazy as everything around you. You watching this video, this is not even real. Those three dimensions of storytelling were turned up so high that it redefined a genre. So I really believe that movie producers and makers, if they really sort of keep these things in the background, when I watch a TV show now, I'm always asking myself, how am I being emotionally affected by this? When I see a character on screen and something sort of happens to the character, or he says something, I'm thinking, okay, I'm asking myself, what does this add to the character's dimensions? What does this make me learn about this character? And finally, on a plot level, I'm asking myself, with particular things that happen, okay, how does this actually advance the storyline? And I think that if you have those three ingredients and you combine them in a sort of particular way, you can take some people sort of to some very sort of crazy places. I remember one of my signatures on Talkback World said something like, it was a quote from one of the BioShock credits, and it was some sort of game developer says, thank you to all the sort of creative designers, directors, and story writers, throughout time, who took the time out to actually, write these stories, produce these games. In my lifetime, I've experienced some incredible things, seen some amazing people, and felt some, fantastic emotions. Something like that. I'm paraphrasing here, but the point is and that's what my signature says down below. Not all stories get told. Not all great stories get told. And I think that's sort of that's the biggest shame that can happen, is that you've got a seed for a story and it doesn't get out there. It doesn't affect people emotionally. It doesn't change people for the better. It doesn't give people something to hang on to at the time of darkness. Much in the same way our fandom is now. It's sort of a dark time. And that's the most interesting thing, that like I said, if all these things just happen, if all these stories were created as good as they were back in the heyday or whatever of movie making, these movie makers would get they'll make so much money automatically, but they're not thinking from that point of view that they don't want to take those risks. But that's the ironic thing. If they take these risks, they make a story, they focus on the emotional involvement, they focus on the characters, they sort of try and identify with people, because like I've said like before, we all have our various roles in life. We're human beings before anything else. So I really think the more you can connect with sort of fundamental, common human sort of flaws, or like personality traits, like the underdog, the cocky, confident guy or whatever, the more chances you have actually to produce a quality piece of fandom. And I really do believe that if this trifecta of ingredients gets introduced into fandom and all these stories get produced, that the executives will be happy, the fat cats will be happy, and the world will actually be happy and a better place for all. Alright, Forristicat signing off. Thanks for listening to this, and peace.